Hi, Jenni here.
Hi, Joel here.
Alright, it's time for another Jane Austen July and our review of Mansfield Park. This is my second read of the book. I read it a few years ago and
This is my first time reading this one.
we've been reading Jane Austen together kind of as a hobby, as a couple bonding. I've read most of Jane Austen, but these are first time reads for Joel. So reading together has always added such great insight to our understanding of Jane Austen and what she writes.
Yes, and I can definitely recommend doing buddy reads
Yeah.
with your partner
Yeah.
or with a friend. It's a really great way to deepen your appreciation of a text.
Exactly. Mansfield Park is an interesting one because we've never seen any adaptation of it. With Pride and Prejudice, Joel had seen the series adaptation of it. So Joel went into this book not knowing anything. And, since my reading of Mansfield Park was quite a few years ago, I didn't remember much from it either, except the ending. In a way, it was kind of like a new read to me as well.
Yeah. The only thing I knew was that the main character is called Fanny.
Yeah, Fanny Price.
That's all.
So in this video we will share our analysis of this book and our opinions and whether we liked it or not. We also watched the movie adaptation afterwards. And we will share brief thoughts on it because it doesn't deserve a full video.
No.
We started reading this in March and we finished it in June. Usually we've had a pretty good reading schedule with these Jane Austen rereads, but this spring was quite challenging in many aspects, so reading this book was not a priority, but we did get it done.
Exactly. We didn't read we didn't have a schedule of we need to read a certain amount of chapters per week. We just read whenever we had the time.
Yeah. So in summary, in Mansfield Park, the main character, Fanny Price, is a young girl when she is sent from her family who has financial burdens to live with her aunt and uncle who are incredibly wealthy at Mansfield Park. And there she lives with the aunt and uncle and 4 cousins. She feels quite out of place. She's shy, timid, and introverted, but forms a special bond with her cousin Edmund. And the reason why her aunt and uncle, her uncle is so wealthy and has this beautiful house like Mansfield Park is because Sir Thomas has slaves in Antigua. So that's kind of the starting place of the novel. It starts when Fanny is really, really young and then goes through her youth and young adulthood.
Yes.
Alright, so going in, first few pages, few chapters, what did you feel? What did you think of the book?
Well, I've read now most Jane Austen books, but as it comes to her stories, I feel like it has a bit of a slow beginning. Maybe the first part, it is separated into 3 parts. The first part is a bit slow, not many outrageous events, but I do also feel like that is kind of the point of the story. But yeah, I think from pace, it is on the slower side.
Yeah, I feel like much of the book was Jane Austen setting the scene.
Yes.
And presenting all characters and their relationships to each other, and Fanny's feeling of being out of place within the family. It felt like a really long introduction.
It was a very long introduction, but I do feel like that it served a purpose because sort of the reader is set into the perspective of Fanny to look at all of this. She's rushed from a very different life into this really a wealthy life where there is all of these societal expectations and all of that. And then she's super shy and introverted, so she's just sitting on the outside of all of that sort of etiquette and all of that craziness, and she's just witnessing events. So for the beginning of the story, Fanny is an extremely passive protagonist, which I feel like is a bit rarer for Jane Austen.
Yeah, I feel like Mansfield Park really showed how different, first of all, Jane Austen's main characters are, and how different, even though they discuss similar themes, the books are really different, and I feel like Mansfield Park really showed that. Yes, it was very, very slow to begin, and I have to admit I was quite bored at times, and I absolutely adore Jane Austen's writing. Just felt very slow, very much like, okay, and then they went to this place, and I know they're visiting a lot of people in every book.
Yes.
It just didn't feel as exciting as like maybe Pride and Prejudice or Emma.
Yeah, but then again, it did create the atmosphere within the reader. Also, it's like these people, the Sir Thomas's family, the Bertrams, when they are these super rich people who have absolutely like they have no cares in the world. They have nothing to worry about. They have no worries. So it sort of just follows their pointless lives basically. So it creates this sort of boredom in the story also, that they don't actually go through. There's no events basically taking place in their lives.
Things started to happen like at the end of the second book, I would say.
Yeah.
And we get to see more sides to Fanny's character besides just that she's introverted. And I think it's really great to have a main character who is shy and introverted, because I feel like oftentimes we are expected to have exciting and determined and strong characters, and Jane Austen showed that you don't have to have that all the time.
Exactly, like in a many like writing seminars and things like that, it's often said that you should make your character as active as possible. That it is a flaw in a story if your character is passive, and I don't think that's true. You should be able to break the rules of storytelling, so you can have a passive character. And this is a very good example of that.
To summarize, like the reading experience in the beginning, much of the book really slow, really takes a long time. But when things do start happening, for example, there's a ball thrown in Fanny's honor, and she doesn't really agree with that. That was really fascinating to read about and kind of feel what Fanny was feeling. Then there are the Crawfords, who are like an acquaintance family to the Bertrams, and they cause all kinds of mayhem.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, can we spoil a book that's like 200 years old?
Well, if you're worried, a spoiler alert here.
And then ultimately, Fanny and Edmund, cousins, get married.
And that's a good thing.
Listen, wedded cousins was a crazy sentence. And I say that as someone who said grandparents were like third cousins. So I know I can't judge too much, but wedded cousins. Different time.
It was a different time. It was a different time, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny that it sort of hinted at the love story between Fanny and Edmund. It's sort of very downplayed throughout the entire book. Like, they're super friendly, they're super close, and that's really lovely to read. And then, like, in the last chapter, there's a part where they're like, well, they actually fell in love. I mean, Fanny was much more clearly, like, actively in love with Edmund.
Yeah, I feel like she was infatuated, but then felt like couldn't do anything about it because Edmund is of higher position in society.
Yeah, and then in the last chapter, Edmund was like, it actually blossomed into love. So, and then they got married.
So I think Fanny would still be my favorite character. I think the story showed such a different character from Jane Austen, which was so refreshing. And I think all of Jane Austen's main characters are different, even though adaptations and all that try to say otherwise.
Yeah, there is this kind of misunderstanding that all Jane Austen characters are the same.
That they're just Elizabeth Bennet.
Yeah, that all protagonists are the same, which is certainly not true. Like, because Jane Austen is, in my opinion, the best character writer in the world. So,
Period.
Yeah, so to say that her main characters are all the same is just like a deliberate misreading of the different books. And also to say that all the characters are Jane Austen herself, which is certainly not true. So I think it's really interesting to see. I think Fanny is a very good example of seeing that difference between the characters and all the depth there are to these characters. So even though Fanny is really introverted, that's not all she is.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's also extremely devoted and loyal.
As for other characters, I'll be really honest. I didn't really care for any of them.
I kind of feel like that's the point too. Like I think what, at least in the beginning of the story, what you're expected to read is this Fanny character who is sort of like an audience surrogate, I think, or a reader surrogate, sort of looking at these people who have no cares in the world, as I mentioned, who are just like rich, spoiled brats, just pretending to have problems, like screaming and absolutely like doing nothing. You're just reading that book, like, what are these guys doing? Like, none of this, there's no point to any of your struggles.
Like, I did appreciate Fanny's and Edmund's like relationship in the sense that they really understood each other. Although Edmund sometimes did put Fanny into very difficult positions regarding Mr. Crawford, for example, someone who proposed to Fanny but absolutely was not the right person for her. And people scrutinized Fanny for saying no so much.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of her for standing her ground and then ultimately was proven right. Aside from that, I think Edmund and Fanny had a really interesting relationship to follow. I also loved Fanny and Williams. William is Fanny's brother, older brother. I really loved their bond as well, and just how much brighter and more lively Fanny became whenever William would come to visit her in Mansfield Park.
And if you've watched a certain unnamed movie, you might be like, who's William?
I don't have much to say about other characters, if I'm honest.
Yeah, Henry Crawford, the guy who wanted to marry Fanny, he had this sort of, to use like a modern parlance, he had this sort of nice guy representation.
But also like a god complex.
Yeah, definitely a god complex. So he was like a massive flirt, like throughout the first, like at the beginning of the story. And then when he like set his sights on Fanny for basically no reason, just, you know, the hunt, you know, I guess.
Because Fanny didn't show complete like devotion to him.
Exactly. Yeah, so he like so then he started like having this sort of a nice guy act of like being a super good person and doing like super nice things to Fanny and trying to sort of like, you know, pretending to be a nice guy just to get what he wants. So I think that that's sort of interesting that we can like identify that sort of character prototype even from such an old text. It shows that men have always sucked.
So, yeah. But I don't have much else to say about the characters. I really don't.
Mary Crawford also had this, like, she was trying to be, like, super, super friendly with Fanny.
Whilst also being very backhanded with Fanny.
Yeah. I feel like how would we summarize this book? Because everybody's so mean to Fanny.
We were reading this. We kept saying, oh my god, why is everyone so mean to Fanny and like rude and kind of dismiss her wants and feelings, and they assume what Fanny wants, and it was really frustrating to read.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the point.
Yeah, kind of like so what you are to face in the world if you are a shy person. It's like this constant...
And of lower class.
Yeah, lower class, shy, introverted, and then not doing what you're supposed to within the society. Like not accepting Mr. Crawford's advances. Proposal is what I was going to say. Okay. But that was much better. It was so interesting to see this sort of story where Fanny, when she has the proposal like thrown in her face from Mr. Crawford, there wasn't a single character in the story that was on Fanny's side.
Right.
Not a single character supporting her.
Right, and just kind of chastising her for rejecting it.
And the nice characters like Sir Thomas, who was sort of nice about it, and Edmund, who was sort of nice about it. So their take wasn't that, I mean, of course you shouldn't marry him if you don't want to, but it's like, you're gonna fall in love with him eventually, so just think about it.
Which shows what the position for women and marriage was back then.
Exactly.
As a modern reader, of course, it feels like, why are you pressuring Fanny? That's so not fair. But at the time, her decision would have been crazy.
Exactly, and it's sort of difficult as a modern reader to read those dialogues between Edmund and Fanny and sort of still see Edmund as a nice person.
Right.
From the time, I guess, that was sort of the nicest possible way to say that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, of course you're gonna marry Mr. Crawford, but like I know it's difficult and you should think about it, take some time, but like you have no choice here.
Yeah. Yeah, which again showed how Jane Austen wanted to comment on the society at hand, and there's still some truth to that in today's society as well. Well, since we are talking about like societal themes and marriage, I think we could move on to like the central themes of the book. I think it's safe to say that all of Jane Austen's books discuss class in different ways and women's place in society. In this book, it was done through Fanny moving from her humble home in financial turmoil to a wealthy home. And what was so fascinating in this book, and what Jane Austen decided to do, was that when near the end of the book, Fanny goes back to visit her family at home, and she is expecting this warm welcome, and then she doesn't get that. It kind of shows that Fanny has been disregarded and discarded from her own family. But what is even more fascinating was that because Fanny had gotten used to the surroundings of Mansfield Park and the wealth that had become normal to her, she started to look down on her family and the place they lived and how they looked. She would, in her mind, like criticize her little sister Susan for the way she looked and the way she behaved, which I thought that was such a stark difference to how Fanny has always been, you know, this shy and timid and not wanting to cause a scene, even in her own thoughts, to then like completely criticize the financial situation of her own family. But I think it was also a reaction to how they reacted to her. They didn't really care that she came to visit. Yeah.
Like the person that she most wanted to see when she visited home was William, her brother, who then immediately left. Which was sort of, I think that was sort of a way for Austen to sort of bring this excitement. So Fanny being super excited to go visit home and spend much more time with William. And then sort of the rug is pulled and William is not there and the family is indifferent towards her. But yeah, it's a bit difficult to sort of accept that premise of like luxury is better. Which I feel like the book is kind of like saying... For like, so Fanny has now become a better person because she doesn't want to live poorly anymore.
Or that she can see what their family situation really is.
Yeah.
We had a bit of a conversation about what Jane Austen meant with that change in attitude with Fanny. As Joel said, he viewed it that maybe she implies that, you know, being rich is better. I hope that she didn't mean that.
I'm not saying that I'm happy about it.
Yeah, I think it brought so much nuance and such surprising perspective to the story that when we were reading the beginning and it was really slow and took a long time, and then by the end of the book there is this kind of switch, felt really clever. But also really unexpected.
Yeah, there's one thing that doesn't really matter at all here, but it's really interesting to see how sort of our societal structure has changed, like geographically. Is because today, like if somebody lives on the countryside, we assume that to be less luxurious. And then if you live in the city, you're expected to be richer and more luxurious. In the book, it was meant that she's going to town, that she's moving back into town, that she's going to the city. And that is like going to a less luxurious place. And then when she goes back to the countryside, that then means that she's going to a more luxurious place.
Yeah, interesting change. And it was also kind of used as a punishment for Fanny for rejecting Mr. Crawford. And then pushing back on the date that Fanny would go back to Mansfield. And there is a point where Fanny does call Mansfield Park home. Yeah. Which shows that she has internalized the habits and the surroundings of the people that she felt like an outsider of. Yeah. So class, wealth, family dynamics, huge themes. Yeah. Another one is slavery. This is the first Jane Austen book to explicitly mention slavery.
Yeah.
And explicitly, but in a very passing manner.
Yeah.
So it is established in the beginning that Sir Thomas has business in Antigua, thus he has enslaved people there. And only once there is a conversation where Fanny like asks about it, like I don't remember the specific quotation, but asks about, you know, him having enslaved people, and Sir Thomas completely brushes it off and doesn't answer her and just moves on like anyway. So and then every now and then it's mentioned that Sir Thomas is back in Antigua. The family's oldest son, Tom, is also part of that business. There are letters from Jane Austen where she shows support for anti-slavery politicians or like activists. So this could have been a way for her to criticize it, or at least bring awareness to it, that this is how the wealth was accumulated through slavery. I do think we can't then just make this like a abolitionist text just based on that, or even that Jane Austen believed in anti-slavery.
Yeah.
I don't think you can just based on some personal letters, you can't just make that judgment. But I do wish that it had been more extensively discussed in the book, but that's also a very modern view.
Exactly. Yeah, from the perspective of a modern reader, it seems supportive almost, because like it's a passing mention and that's it.
Yeah, and the fact that then in the end Fanny kind of internalizes and embraces all the wealth and sees it as a completely positive thing.
Yeah.
And the wealth has been acquired at least partially based on slavery, enslaving people.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
heartbreaking. So while I do think slavery and bringing up slavery and where Sir Thomas's wealth came from are really important, and it's really good that Jane Austen had done that, I wish she had explored it a little bit more, but also understand that that's a modern way of looking at this text.
Yeah.
But still, I think that's a valid criticism to
yeah.
have. And that doesn't mean I'm like hating Jane Austen or something like that. Absolutely not. And then we already talked about marriage and women's position in society. A lot of Jane Austen's writing is about that because it was very relevant at the time, and it was, you know, relevant to her own life as well. And when Jane Austen writes characters at the time of rejecting proposals from slimy guys, like in other books, she just has a really great way of discussing the nuances of marriage and love when at the time they've been like a given to women, that's the only way for them to live happy lives and any life. And if they don't get married, they are shameful. I just really love how Jane Austen has nuanced discussions of that topic.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you weren't reading it from sort of like a nuanced perspective, I feel like another less nuanced writer would have made Mr. Crawford like much more over the top, like slimy, and much more over the top evil. But like to have that nuance there and have that sort of in the background of the character and make the character basically like love bomb Fanny, it sort of activates your sort of like nuanced and depth of reading in the story, that it's not just a representation of this thing, but it's like actual living characters going through these events.
Overall, was this a worthy read? Was it worth reading Mansfield Park? I think so.
Yeah. I think it was I would never say that it's a bad book. I think it's a good book. It's a good book.
Not my favorite Jane Austen, but worthy read regardless. If you plan to read this, prepare yourself that it's going to be quite slow in the beginning.
Yeah.
But things do pick up, and there is really great analysis of society in this book.
Definitely.
So to kind of round out our reading experience of Mansfield Park and our time with Fanny Price, we watched the adaptation from 1999. We will try to keep this brief because I genuinely don't want to give too much time for this adaptation, and we already ranted a lot while watching it.
Yeah, like if we could rant for another 30 minutes right now.
Yeah, but it's not worth it.
No.
The context is that there were a lot of successful adaptations done at like end of 90s. Pride and Prejudice, BBC, Sense and Sensibility, huge successes. So I almost view it that, well, let's do another one. You know, Jane Austen, like they have these strong female characters, right? My takeaway was that either the creators of the movie didn't read the book, or that they did read it, thought that Fanny, as an introverted person, as an outsider, is not exciting enough of a character. So they had to make her into a hybrid of Elizabeth Bennet and the real-life Jane Austen. In the movie, Fanny writes a book that Jane Austen wrote. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and like we said, what is one of the greatest things about Jane Austen as a writer is how good of a character writer she is. And that extends to the protagonists. Every single Jane Austen protagonist is a different person. You take one of the most interesting Jane Austen protagonists and most different Jane Austen protagonists, and you just rip her out of the page. You just do like, well, we're just gonna do like a strong woman Jane Austen Elizabeth Bennet character to just rip the whole heart of the story.
Change the whole dynamic of the character. Completely changed her personality traits. Fanny in the movie did things that Fanny in the book would never. They removed William completely and replaced their relationship with one of Fanny's sisters, Susan. And that just shows to me like, well, Elizabeth Bennet, she has Jane. Sense and Sensibility, Eleanor and Marianne, they're close. Oh, obviously Jane Austen is all about just sisterhood, and I love those relationships. But it should have been William. They shouldn't have changed it. And yeah, just things that Fanny would never do. Like in the movie adaptation, she accepts Mr. Crawford's proposal, but then resents it. And just Fanny would never.
Yeah.
Fanny would never.
Also, societally, take kiss out of wedlock. No.
The movie also discussed slavery, but in my opinion it was done in a very cheap way, as a way to just shock the viewer and not offer any kind of added nuance or discussion. Just showing these pictures and brief moments of how horrifying slavery is as a way to shock the viewer, not as a way to show how horrible slavery was. It was a really cheap take, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then after that, they solve slavery by just saying that Mr. Thomas changed. He changed to a different field, and that they just had the same wealth. So like, it purely for shock value, and then just brush it off almost with a joke. So.
This adaptation was really upsetting to me.
Yeah.
Very upsetting. Then I went on Wikipedia to see, okay, how was it received at the time? And apparently people really loved it and reviewers loved it, which to me just shows that they don't appreciate Jane Austen's work as Jane Austen's work, but rather a Hollywood version of that. It was awful. Don't recommend the adaptation.
Absolutely not.
I think that's it.
Yep.
We have one more Jane Austen book to read together of the 6 major novels. That's Northanger Abbey. Like I shared last year, I haven't read it either. I know. Horrible. I think we're gonna aim to read it next year. In the springtime or something like that.
Sounds good to me.
I hope you enjoyed this video. What are you reading for Jane Austen July? I know we finished the book before Jane Austen July, but I think it counts. You know what? Every year is a Jane Austen year, in my opinion.
Exactly.
And thank you, Joel, my beautiful fiancé, for being on my channel once again.
Thank you so much for having me.
See you in the next one. Bye.